Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. Joe Healy here, as always, to take you through all of Friday's action around the SEC and get you ready for Saturday's games. First, before we get into any of that, got to let you know and remind you that all Saturday episodes of Weekend Waypoints are brought to you by Plains Coffee Company. A lot of good news about Plains Coffee Company, as I've been telling you for weeks now. First off, it's a husband and wife team roasting coffee beans in the heart of the SEC footprint. So it doesn't get any more local small business than that. So, we love to support local small businesses like that. Additionally, free shipping on all orders in the United States. And if you use the code baseball at plainscoffee.com, get 10% off of your order. And the combination of 10% off your order plus free shipping makes those fresh roasted beans incredibly affordable. I don't know about you, but so often when I'm ordering something online, I get to the shipping page, and unless we're talking Amazon Prime where that shipping is free, that shipping hits and it kind of makes you take a step back. But free shipping at plainscoffee.com plus 10% off with the code baseball. And then finally, they do not roast the beans until you order them. You order them, they roast them, they ship them the next morning. So your beans are as fresh as they could possibly be once they arrive on your doorstep. So again, plainscoffee.com, support the people who support us. We appreciate them. We appreciate you. And all I ask is that you support folks who have gone out of their way to support us in this endeavor at Weekend Waypoints. Let's talk game of the day. Honestly, pretty in terms of the scores, not a banner day, in terms of we didn't have banger after banger in terms of the quality of games. But we did have an extra inning game. So the game of the day is Missouri 6, Georgia 5. I'll pull up the box score here. And while I do that, I'll say that, this is the kind of series where, Georgia's kind of, been a little bit up and down so far this season during SEC play. And, it brings up a big rubber game today. And it's the kind of game where if Georgia loses today's game to lose a series and they end up on the wrong side of the bubble, that's the kind of series they're going to rue losing. Right. Now, clearly Missouri is frisky. They've won 4 out of the last 5 SEC games. They've now won an SEC game on the road by winning this game 6-5. But it's just the kind of series that if Georgia's serious about being on the right side of the bubble versus the wrong side of the bubble, this is not the type of series you want to lose. Let's dive in a little bit here. Obviously, the big inning for Missouri, the 4-run 7th inning, Trevor Austin with a 3-run home run in that inning was a big part of it. The theme here, though, was relievers really giving it all they got. Brian Zeldin threw 5 innings in relief for Georgia, threw 90 pitches, as you can see here. Just a workhorse effort, and that's kind of how they've been using him. Like increasingly, as the season has gone on, they've been using Brian Zeldin in these longer and longer outings. And he was, fairly effective. He gave up that 4-run 7th, but after that kind of locked it down and gave Georgia a chance to win that game. On the other side, Ryan McDeish, who, if you haven't seen this guy, pretty talented pitcher from Missouri. It's, I can't remember if I mentioned him last week on Waypoints when I was at the Missouri series against Florida, but it's a fastball where the velocity doesn't really necessarily wow you, but it's like, it's 92, 94, but it's got a lot of carry on it. And then he's got a good slider to go with it. And, struck out 8 and 3 1/3 innings in his outing there, through 75 pitches. And he hadn't had a lot of extended outings. So I was surprised they rode him as long as they did, but it pays off because they get the 6-5 win. 2 errors in the top of the 10th inning. Adding insult to injury for Georgia is the fact that the Missouri run in the 10th scored with the help of not 1 but 2 errors in the inning. So kind of a sloppy way for that game to end. But congrats to Mizzou, again, showing that they're frankly just better than I thought they'd be. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I thought that they might win 5 SEC games, but it might take them most of the season to do it. And we're not even halfway through SEC play. So kudos to them for showing some fight that I didn't necessarily think they would show. And they showed again Friday night with that win against Georgia. Like I said, big rubber game today between the two teams. Let's go to some comments here for people that are joining me. Jeremy Scott on Facebook with his usual Roll Tide. Tough loss last night. Still a chance to win the series. Yep. I mean, that's how you have to think of it. But yeah, tough loss last night. for Alabama against Arkansas. They made a late push, scored 3 late runs once you get, Hagen Smith out of there. And they scored the runs off Will McIntyre, which nobody's really done that this season. So that was a win for sure, but just couldn't quite complete the comeback. Arkansas wins at 5-3. We'll talk more about that game as we go along. But yeah, tough loss. But if you're Alabama, you got another rough start from Ben Hess, and that's a lot of these in a row, frankly. But you still hung in there. I think you could feel positive about the way you played while being disappointed about the loss. On YouTube, Moonshine, good morning, Mr. Healy. Good morning to you, Moonshine. Tanner Harris on YouTube, also with a good morning. Good morning, Tanner. He said it's Mason Molina Day, and that it is. Mason Molina Day for Arkansas in that second game of the series against Alabama. Mason Molina and Brady Tigert have been, not as big a part of things as Hagen Smith, but having those two guys behind Hagen Smith this season and having them be so steady has made it to where Arkansas has really been able to take pretty good care of Hagen Smith. I mean, you'll notice every week he just throws 6 innings. They're not in a position where they're like, gosh, we really got to get more innings out of him. He could throw more, I'm certain, but they're just being as cautious with him as they can possibly be, just to keep the wear and tear off and allow him to be strong come May and June. We'll see if that works, obviously, but so far the ability to do that is in large part because guys like Molina and Tigert have been able to give them quality the other 2 days of the weekend. So congratulations on making it to Mason Molina Day there, Tanner. All right, so let's talk player of the day. As always, I will go through a bunch of options here and use those options as a jumping off point to talk about the individual games. Trevor Austin mentioned him from Missouri, 2 for 4 with that 3-run home run. Cole Messina for South Carolina, big win for South Carolina over Florida, 10-3. That scoreline's a little deceiving. They poured it on late. It was a 5-3 game until the 9th inning, but South Carolina really did control that game. I watched most of the first half of that game because it was one of the first ones to start. It felt like South Carolina was really in control, even when it was a closer game. And it's another game where Florida's offense just stuck in neutral. And Eli Jones is a good pitcher, so that's part of it. But it is a continuation of where Florida's offense was last week, which was nowhere good against Missouri. So something to monitor moving forward is whether Florida can kind of push itself out of this. Like suddenly Florida's really starting to take on water. This is a series at home that they need to win, frankly. I mean, you're in a similar place in the SEC pecking order right now to where South Carolina is. This game could be a difference maker between where you finish in the standings, could be a difference maker between who's on a host line and who's a 2 potentially. So a big couple of days for Florida coming up, but they're going to have to swing the bats better than they have of late. But Cole Messina in that game for South Carolina, 3 for 5 with a walk. In his return after being in concussion protocol, he batted leadoff for the Gamecocks, which is not typically where he ends up batting, but got it done there. Speaking of Florida, Tanner Garrison. And that's how, no disrespect to Tanner Garrison, but when Tanner Garrison is your best offensive player, like you've got some guys struggling. He went 3 for 4 with a double. He's done this a couple times this season where kind of out of nowhere he's their best offensive guy. But again, you'd prefer your player of the day if you're Florida be obviously Cags, but he's doing plenty. But Colby Shelton or Ty Evans or Cade Kurland or pick your guy. But it's Tanner Garrison. A&M just blew the doors off Vanderbilt 15-0. Braden Montgomery, 2 for 4 with 2 doubles, 4 runs batted in. At the risk of spoiler alert, we'll get to one of his teammates here in just a minute. Kentucky, another win. They beat Auburn 9-1. Good all-around performance for the Wildcats. The Wildcats are now 13-1 in SEC play. And look, again, they're catching teams at decent times. Auburn is not playing well, but that's part of the deal. And 13-1 is 13-1. So recall that Tennessee started 17-1 2 years ago when they were the best team in college baseball in the regular season. So Kentucky could get there, but it would require a win today to sweep the series against Auburn and then a sweep next weekend at home against, you guessed it, Tennessee. Now, that seems extremely unlikely given how good Tennessee is. But at this point, I don't know. Like, I feel like all of us would have gone broke betting against Kentucky at this point in certain situations, and they keep winning. I think what's most impressive about them, I won't say most impressive, but a differentiator this year versus last year is, I've said this before, like this team is more physical. They hit 6 home runs yesterday. And I guess while I'm here, Ryan Waldschmidt went 3 for 5 with a home run. Nolan McCarthy went 3 for 5 with a home run. Ryan Nicholson hit 2 home runs. They're actually third in the SEC in SEC play. They are third in home runs. I don't know if that's sustainable, if it's a function of the pitching they've seen. Auburn pitching has given up a lot of home runs this year, so that's a factor. But this team is more physical. I just don't think there's no two ways about it. Like the lineup is better in that regard. Where you've got a guy like Ryan Nicholson is giving production similar to what Hunter Gillum gave you, and he was one of the guys you lost there. And Mitchell Daly, he's not one of the physical guys, but Mitchell Daly has done a good job, filling in as a starter at third base. So, for guys you lost last year, so it's a really good lineup, swinging it well right now. I told somebody the other day, this Kentucky team thinks they're the best team in the country. Whether or not they're right is a different story, but that belief that, hey, nobody can beat us if we play our game is a powerful thing. And so I think I said it last weekend. I'm kind of starting to back off of putting any sort of limits on this team. And honestly, with 13 SEC wins, like I said yesterday, they're not that far off from being, already being in position where you're looking at them as a top 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. Tougher days are to come. They have Tennessee, they have Arkansas. But they've already done so much work on their resume that it's hard to imagine a total collapse for that group. Okay, getting back to it quickly. For Arkansas in that 5-3 win against Alabama, Jared Sprague-Lott 2 for 2 with 2 doubles and a home run, so reached 4 times. And that's kind of a great example of what I've talked about with Arkansas's lineup, which, okay, you don't have a Tommy White in the middle of your order. You don't have an Ethan Petrie, Charlie Condon. But what you do have are 12 or 13 guys at any given time that can be your best guy. Jared Sprague-Lott is a good example of that, a guy that I don't know that a lot of casual SEC fans are all that familiar with, transfer from Richmond, but is having a really nice season for Arkansas and was big for them yesterday. And then for LSU in that losing effort against Tennessee taking home a 6-3 victory. Tommy White 3 for 5 with a double. Obviously, anything that LSU does offensively moving forward, he's going to have to be right in the center of it. But our player of the day is Jace Laviolette for Texas A&M, 2 for 3 with 2 home runs and 6 runs batted in that blowout 15-0 win over Vanderbilt. If you're Vanderbilt, it's the kind of game where you just move on to today as it is, move on to today and just flush that one. Like there's really not a lot you could take from that one. Tough day on the mound for the Commodores. You move on. You've got Carter Holton still in your pocket, so you've got an opportunity. Especially, you're going to face Tanner Jones, who has not been as successful this year as Ryan Prager. So you like your chances to battle back today. You just can't let. It's the classic coaching cliche. You can't let one loss turn into 2 losses. Yeah, you got run off the field yesterday. That sucked. We've got another opportunity today. I suspect they'll come out and attack it that way. Wrapping up some other comments here. Michael Starr on YouTube. Quickly, Trent Donnell on YouTube. Thank you for the correction. I said 2 doubles. Braden Montgomery had 2 homers. My apologies if I said 2 doubles. Yeah, I'll correct that. Michael Starr on YouTube. I'm not a State or Ole Miss fan, so I haven't really watched them. But how has State won 22 of the last 28 against Ole Miss? That's insane. I agree, Michael. That especially when you consider that it's not like. Look, over since 2015, last time Ole Miss won a series against State, those 2 programs have been pretty similar. They both won a national title. They've both, had a really rough year. Ole Miss last year, State the previous 2 years, which only makes that feat more impressive. But for the most part, before that, they were really good. State went to Omaha a few times, sure, but Ole Miss was hosting. Now they were having some disappointing exits in the postseason, but those are very good teams at Ole Miss. So the idea that not even in Oxford have they been able to win a series since 2015 is extremely crazy. And, right now, State is, at this very moment, State is just very clearly a better team as currently constructed. And we saw that last night with an 8-0 win for State. But the idea that they've just been leaps and bounds more successful than Ole Miss in this series is wild to me. Totally agree, Michael. That I can't fathom it. And then Carl Dutt on YouTube, one of our go-to LSU fans here every week on Weekend Waypoints. My Tigers are in a dark spot. I agree. Jay Johnson is trying everything and seems like nothing is working. Yeah, I kind of agree, Carl. Like it does strike me that, and Jay is a tinkerer. Like he is a guy, and I mean that in a good way. Like he's a guy who's not just going to sit around and say, "Oh, they'll figure it out. They'll work it out." I think he has trust in his players that way, but he's not just going to run the same lineup out there, the same pitchers out there, and say, "Oh, it'll get better." Like he's going to try some stuff, and he's tried some motivational stuff. If you talk about the carrot and the stick, he's tried the stick with no cell phones. He's tried the carrot stuff, just like positive reinforcement, and it just, it doesn't seem like anything's really clicking right now. I think today will be telling. We'll talk about today's game here shortly, but I think today will be telling for LSU. I feel like I've said this 100 times already this season of like, hey, this is a chance, or this is a spot where LSU needs to show us something, and they really haven't shown us much this season. So maybe I'm just grasping for something that's not ever going to be there this season. And how crazy is it that, look, we don't know how the rest of the season will end. Maybe LSU has a run on them. I'm still saying, I go on Baton Rouge radio every week, and I'm still saying I think this team's too talented to not have a run in it. But they are in a position now where they are staring down doing exactly what State and Ole Miss did the last 2 years. And the idea that three of the most successful college baseball programs of the 21st century and late in the 20th century, not so much Ole Miss, I guess, State and LSU certainly, but of the 21st century, those are three of the most consistent college baseball programs, and they've won national titles and then had really rough years, not mediocre years, not rebuilding years, just rough, like things not going well. I don't know that there's any commonality there. I feel like a sociologist should study that. It's above my pay grade to kind of figure out what's happening there, but weird, just strange. Okay, let's talk pitcher of the day. Here's some candidates. Eli Jones, South Carolina, another good outing for him in that win against Florida. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. I mentioned Ryan Prager for Texas A&M, a 7-inning complete game. They obviously run-ruled Vanderbilt at 15-0. Gave up 4 hits, didn't walk anybody, 10 strikeouts. Dom Nyman for Kentucky, another good start for him. This one against Auburn, 5 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 1 run. He kind of piggybacked with Jackson Novey out of the bullpen, left-hander reliever for Kentucky. He threw 3 scoreless innings, giving up 1 hit. So they're kind of a package deal there. Hagen Smith, like ho-hum, 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, no runs, 6 strikeouts, which, 6 is a low number for him. Like, I feel like that's a bare minimum strikeout per inning for Hagen Smith. So I guess good on Alabama for making some contact. But another, 6 shutout innings for Hagen Smith, and it just kind of feels like, meh, shrug of the shoulders. And that just speaks to how great he's been this year. For Tennessee, A.J. Causey in relief was very good, which is interesting because he's the guy they bumped from the rotation. They start Chris Stamos, and we kind of knew that was going to be a short outing because Stamos has been a reliever, but he throws 2 2/3 solid innings, gives up 1 run. And then A.J. Causey comes in and throws 4 2/3 scoreless, strikes out 7. And I do wonder if that is maybe like a solution moving forward. They've piggybacked a little bit with like Sechrist and then Snead. And I do wonder if maybe Stamos and then Causey could be something similar, right? I mean, it worked yesterday. Doesn't mean it's going to work moving forward, but it is an interesting thing because before he was in the rotation early this season, if you go way back, Causey was good in relief in that kind of role. So maybe that's something where he doesn't have to feel the pressure to go 5 or 6. You can have him just really push to give you 3 or 4 great innings. Maybe that's more comfortable for him. Maybe that's better for him. Something to watch moving forward. But yeah, 4 2/3 scoreless for Causey there. But the pitcher of the day is Cal Steven of Mississippi State. I feel like he's won this award. I should be writing these down so that I can keep track of them, but next year, I guess. Cal Steven of Mississippi State, 8 innings pitched, 3 hits, no runs, no walks, 9 strikeouts. He's our pitcher of the day. It was a little up and down early in the season for Cal Steven, but he's been very solid in SEC play. And I gotta say, a guy I saw him pitch in the Cape over the summer. I got reports from the fall when he was first on campus, and I wasn't necessarily. I thought he'd be solid. I thought he'd be all right, but I didn't necessarily have the expectation that he was going to be a guy who could do this against an SEC lineup. And okay, it's Ole Miss, I get it, but still. So he's been really impressive. I just didn't know if his stuff. It's good stuff. It's not electric. He didn't miss a ton of bats at Purdue relative to how good his stuff is, but he's taken a jump and he's been really good for them. So kudos to Cal Steven. He and Senja have been cornerstones for that team. Without them doing what they've done, State wouldn't be in the position it's been in, especially earlier in the season when the offense really wasn't producing like we thought it would. Okay, let's wrap up by talking about the game of the day on Saturday. It's LSU at Tennessee, mostly for the pitching matchup. Luke Holman and Drew Beam, one of the matchups you would have thought would have been on a Friday, but various things have made it to where it is not. It is instead on a Saturday, but should be an outstanding matchup nonetheless. Luke Holman obviously been one of the best pitchers in the SEC this season. Drew Beam has had his share of outings where he got hit a little bit, but generally has been good, was very good last week. So looking forward to that matchup between two of the true aces in the SEC. And like I said, hey, LSU, you got your guy on the mound today. Are you gonna show us something here? Is this, what are we going to see from LSU for the 100th time this season? It's beyond time for LSU to start making a move. So we'll see what comes of that today. Wrapping up a couple of comments here. Ann Schulke, I'm assuming perhaps mother of Cam Schulke, drops in on X with a Hail State. Thank you for joining us, Ann. Good luck to Cam this weekend and the rest of the season. Carl on YouTube agrees. Holman versus Beam. This is where LSU needs to check its worth. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Like, look, if you're not going to show something, if you're not going to go out and control this game with Luke Holman on the mound against Tennessee in this kind of road environment, like I just don't know if you've got it in you. So that is, I think, a good way to summarize it there, Carl. And then Matthew Boyd on YouTube is an Ole Miss fan that needs someone to pull for in the postseason. Who should I adopt halfway through the year? Well, I mean, it kind of depends on, because you're already an SEC fan. I know there's certain, like, I couldn't tell you to root for State, right? Like, that's just not going to work. So I would say, unless you have any personal bias against some of the teams, choose a team in the East, because you don't have as strong a rivalry with those teams. You're not going to face them as often. You probably don't have as much bad blood. And honestly, Kentucky's a fun team. Like, I would give you Kentucky. They're historically an underdog in the SEC. You never know how long these runs they're on are going to last. They have some disadvantages. They play loose. Like, they do, all kinds of stuff in the dugout. Like, they have the team motto of "Let's get weird." They just kind of embrace the fun part of college baseball that I think so many of us like about college baseball. In addition to the fact that, look, they're hitting home runs, sure, but they're still stealing bases. They still play great defense. Their infield defense is outstanding. They're just a fun watch. So, unless there's some beef with Kentucky that you have because of some, I don't know, football thing that happened, 10 years ago or something like that, that might be my choice, just because, again, it's not like Ole Miss and Kentucky have this deep-seated thing. I mean, they played this year, but it's not like they have any sort of deep-seated resentment necessarily the way you would your most tough rivals. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. As always, on these Weekend Waypoints episodes, they make for a fun little back and forth there. They help break up the show. They force me to think on my toes sometimes, which I appreciate, even if I don't always land the plane, if you will, thinking on my feet. But I'm glad Matthew comes back in and says, "I like it. Let's go Cats." There you go. Okay. So yeah, even if I don't always land the plane, I'm happy that I did there. I appreciate you guys coming in and making me think on my feet. I guess I'll squeeze one more in on YouTube. Vandy Chris 24, Kentucky or Arkansas, which one is making a run at 26-3 in the SEC? I think you'd have to go Arkansas. But 26-3 is just so tough, man. The other thing about 26-3 is that at a certain point, as you get 2-3 weeks out from the end of the regular season, you're already a top 8 seed. You're probably one of the top couple of seeds. The motivation starts to sag a little bit. That's just human nature. To me, that's the hardest part about going something like 26-3. referencing a previous Vanderbilt record in the SEC play. But so to me, it's less about who's better and more about like who's going to stay hungry. I'll go Arkansas just because I like that team better right now. I like the talent more, but that'll be interesting to watch. Certainly, both teams on a at 13-1 or like 13-1 for Kentucky, 12-1 for Arkansas. Certainly, they're both on good trajectories there. All right, folks, that's it for this edition. Enjoy the baseball today. I'll be back with y'all tomorrow morning to preview Sunday action around the SEC. Take care.